Hello and welcome to another episode of Open Plus Sec. Uh, I am with your boy 24. You already know him. He doesn't need any introduction. How are you doing, 24?
Uh,
Cool. So today we're going to be talking about some open source and open source security news as usual. But we're also going to be doing a discussion on some very common, very also very dangerous open source vulnerabilities. Uh, it could be. We're going to be talking about like some specific ones like Heartbleed and Log4 Shell. We're also going to be talking about some like just general ones like typosquatting and dependency confusion. So stay tuned. 24. Let's get started with the news then. What do you have for me?
Sonar is actually a business security company where they manage open source components, and because they want to try to acquire titles for them to be able to now say, okay, how can we handle check software code for bugs, uh, check for inconsistencies and security flaws, mainly using the titles platform. That will give them the opportunity, or that will give them the more wings to be able to try to protect the open source ecosystem more efficiently. And even though tide lifts have been able to raise quite a large number of money, about $73 million, according to according to the Crunchbase rather, it's still under they're still kind of like under the weather. If that word is even applicable to be able to for them to continue paying maintenance. And this acquisition basically make Sonar focus force carry the organization to focus more on building softwares for their own use. So yeah, that's one. Uh, can you take the second one?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to talk about. This is not very recent. It's actually from I think September of 2024, which is now last year. And it's about Zap. I mean, we talk a lot about Zap, and we will continue to do so because it's a major, open source tool for security testing. So it's very important actually. And actually, some commercial application security scanners actually depend on Zap if you look deeper. So yeah, they're quite very relevant. And so the announcement that was made in September is that they've joined forces with Checkmarks with an X at the end to basically. I don't think it's an acquisition as per, you know, buying the business, the company. It's not even a business. It's completely non-profit and open source. I don't think that's the case where they've bought the organization, but basically what's happening is the three project leaders, Simon Bennett, Ricardo, and Rick, are getting hired by Checkmarks, and that means that I mean they're working for Checkmarks, but one of their main focuses or their main focus is going to be continuing to work on Zap, meaning that instead of just working on Zap in their free time and still having to maybe do other work to make ends meet, they're going to be able to work on Zap full time and dedicate more resources to it. And I think they're also going to be using some of the company's resources to continuously develop Zap. So I think this is like major news. And if you go to the website or if you even download Zap today, you'll see that it says Zap by Checkmarks. And it's quite interesting because Zap has gone through like a whole journey of like different funding sources, trying to stay alive. As important as it is, um, they've had their fair share of challenges. I think at some point it used to be called OWASP Zap, because OWASP had like a huge, I would say, influence and potentially funding. I don't know the details of that, but it was called OWASP Zap. So obviously they had lots of support from OWASP, and um, they haven't been called OWASP Zap for a while now, even though people still call it OWASP Zap, which is quite interesting. And I think they had some funding from the Linux Foundation, which ended around, I don't know, March, April 2024. And then they got on this Crash Override Open Source Fellowship. So they got funding from that. And again, during that time, if you download Zap, you'll see on the first page of their website, or even on the actual software itself, you'll see Zap is supported by the Crash Override Fellowship or something like that. But now, from September, they've partnered with Checkmarks, meaning that the project leads have basically been employed by Checkmarks to continue working on Zap. Zap itself will continue to be open source. I hope that remains the case for the long term. Um, you know, I hope it just stays open source, and then obviously it's a commercial entity. Checkmarks is a commercial entity, so they have their own products, suites for application security testing, and their dynamic application security testing products is actually based on Zap, like underground. Underneath everything is Zap working in the background. So I can see how this benefits them in the long run as well, to continue developing Zap, supporting it as an open source project, while also reaping the benefits for their own product as well. So yeah, it's quite major news. I don't know why we didn't cover it all this time, but I thought it's important to talk about it, even though it's been quite a while now. I think you had one other news please to talk about.
Oh yes, this is very very recent. Speaking about Linux Foundation, we are very aware that Linux Foundation is one of those big guys in the open source field, and they're quite having a number of events that they organize on their own end, just to bring together enthusiast learners to share knowledge and all of that. So the current one right now, which is OpenSearchCon, happening in Europe, in Amsterdam, I guess. Yes, yeah. So they currently are calling for participants or speakers rather to submit proposals. And this is open up until January 19th. And if you apply, the conference is going to happen on April 30th and May 1st, which is in about 16 weeks. And it's very, very important for you to know that topics that are suggested are around search. Obviously, that is the main focus of the conference. Analytics, security, and observability, community, operation open search. You could pick any topic that is wrapped around these fields, just so you know that it's not all basically focused on the technical aspect, but you can as well come from the community perspective to now talk about the builders community. How can they contribute to open search? And it's very, very important to know that if you are actually working on a project also that is based upon open search, it's quite important for you to try to see how you can pitch into this and just gain that attention. So there are basically two types of sessions. It's the longer session, which is for 40 minutes, including question and answer, and the short presentation, which is for 20 minutes, including question and answer. And it's important for you to also know that it's a 2 days event and in-person events, obviously. There's no fee for speakers, but I believe there's a travel support one way or the other. So, but yeah, you can actually just go on Linux Foundation or events.linuxfoundation.org to check out OpenSearchCon, and it's very interesting for you to just by taking stuff like this and it helps your awareness as well. So yeah, that's I think the last one for for news. So you can actually just jump
Yeah,
into it right now.
yeah, I think that's an interesting opportunity, and maybe one of us should or both of us should submit a talk uh at that conference and see what happens. I don't know.
Yes, and sincerely, yeah, we can. Of course, why not?
Cool. So moving on to the discussion. Uh we want to talk about some open source vulnerabilities, very prominent vulnerabilities, and this is something that we'll continuously talk about. There's so many things out there that it's not realistic to cover in one video. I think what's going to end up happening is we'll just have a playlist for different things. Because there's just so many things, so many things to discuss here. So I'm going to talk about this open source backdoor in XZ or XZ, however you want to say it. It's a data compression library that um so what happened is that we had some people join the project on GitHub, and they've been like trying to contribute to the code base, and I think they've been in the code base, or they've been part of that project for like years. A user going by the name of GRT75, and made so many contributions to the project for years. And then, I mean, it seems like this is some kind of very committed effort for you to spend years contributing to a project. It's either one of two things. It's either you wanted to compromise it in the first place and you're willing to spend that number of time, or after contributing, you at some point decided, you know what, I can leverage this to do something malicious in the future. Or it could be that the account was compromised after a few years, but that's not very likely, honestly, from everything that I've read about this. And how was it discovered? So a researcher, I believe an employee of Microsoft, was testing a version of Linux, um, like a beta version that had this utility, and noticed that the speed was slow, a little bit slow, like less than a second slower than it should have been. Which I don't know how you notice something like that, but if you've been doing something, many times for a very long time, it's very easy to like notice things like that. And he was like, "Wait, this doesn't seem right." And then he started investigating, and that's kind of what led to the process of finding out that um there was some kind of backdoor malicious code that interferes with the authentication, the SSH, and it could allow any malicious actor to break the SSH authentication and gain unauthorized access to an entire system remotely. And some of the things I'm saying, I'm quoting the article on Computer Weekly. I'm going to drop the link if you want to read more about it. But the actual, like the main investigation that most outlets are referencing is an investigation by Ars Technica, and they do lots of threat intelligence research and things like that. So you can, if you want to dive really deep into it, you can still go to that particular research article by Ars Technica. I'm going to link it as well, and yeah, it's quite interesting and just mad that someone committed years of their life to try and put a backdoor in XZ utils. And this didn't make it to any like production Linux distribution. It was caught at the beta stage, meaning maybe only developers and people that were testing out the features would have been affected. But if this had made it to production, it would have been a massive issue. Even if it took just 1 week after it was released to production, imagine the sheer number of servers, of clients, of all this software that would have already been upgraded to that version. And then before they put out a patch and before it goes into the patch goes into production, it would become an issue for a very long time, for months. It will be a huge issue, and some servers might end up not even getting patched at all for a long time. So yeah, we got saved by a um I think a developer or a researcher, I can't remember, who noticed things were a little bit slow and decided to investigate further.
Ali,
You said, yeah.
before we just move ahead, and I wanted to just get your head or get your point on now in this situation where this was a we would call him a loyal contributor or a loyal developer on projects from the onset or from the beginning. So now, what do you think? You read out their reasons, but to you, what do you think is actually the reason why he would either turn, or was that his real intention from the beginning?
It could be any number of things. Threat actors do things for multitudes of reasons, but it could be some kind of like organized cybercrime, even though I don't think there's any like extensive evidence to show that it was, state sponsored or anything like that. But it looks to be something. It has to have been something that was that like organized. I can't think of a reason for a lone actor, like just a solo person, to try and cause a backdoor on that kind of scale, because it's like if you have a specific target, just go for that target. And why spend so many years targeting this particular what's it called? This particular project if you're just a lone actor? Unless I don't know. I can't get into the person's head. But it could be, state sponsored, it could be organized cybercrime, it could be anything really. I can't really say. But I guess the main reason would be to be able to to gain access to, pretty much like a huge number of servers, of infrastructure, of systems that rely on this utility. And you could also get a head start if you're the only one that knows about it. So it could be a situation where, you're exploiting it for as long as you can until someone finds out and then they remediate it, and then other people are able to exploit it as well. So yeah, I don't know if is the short answer, I guess.
Yeah, that's actually interesting because if you look at widely or on a more general level now, looking at open source, you tend to now see that this particular project can actually get compromised to a number of ways. For example, now having one particular maintainer, and because you're not paying this maintainer, obviously, so you kind of like don't expect their how would I put this in English? You kind of don't expect them to put all of their time to say, okay, um, this is my daily activity or this is my daily job, and I have to put my all into it to make sure that I am protecting it and making sure that I'm not just approving just anything that comes. You take your time very, very well to actually look at things or look at what people are contributing to. Or imagine where a maintainer device get compromised. Obviously, I think that's where development environment comes in. Obviously, open source contributors are using their own personal computers to contribute to this project. Who knows? Maybe maybe his device got hacked, and they were just able to kind of like use his own profile or use his own account to do some of these things just because he has access. That's a number of things that I believe could happen, which can actually also lead to maybe the next discussion, which is typosquatting. Typosquatting now is, for people who don't know what typosquatting is. Typosquatting is basically a situation where a particular package or anything in general is being misspelled. So let's imagine you want to spell pump plus sec. You basically know that the plus in between, there are two s in between plus and sec, so it could be manipulated or misspelled as with just one s. And sometimes that's very tricky because you cannot see it very, very early, so please don't use that against us. It's kind of like one of that ways in which most of these packages or projects can be manipulated. So imagine if your own popular package or your own popular npm packages has been cloned, and some little malicious code are already embedded into that particular package. And just because you are just so, all you cared about was just hit the download and you just go ahead. Sometimes these dependencies you don't even have time to check these dependencies in depth. Why? Because you're downloading them, or you're kind of like getting them, not like individually, but as a group. So, and one of these packages might actually contain malicious package in which you might not see, and just because you were just so too fast to not even check a simple review called the discussion forums to see what people are talking about, you missed out on that, and you just basically fall victim. One npm package that caught my attention was I'm trying to get the name back. So it was basically an npm package that actually gave the attacker, or gave attackers a command and control kind of like access. So yes, fetch mock.jest or fetch mock.jest. So it was just the simple thing there were two actually. So the simple misspelling that was there was just making the jest instead of jest, gest, and the malicious one was actually jet. So just actually knowing the name of what you want to do or what you want to use is actually also very important, and how it is actually being spelled. So obviously that particular package will not have attention on it on the repo itself. The public repo itself will not have much attention on it compared to the real one. If you maybe, I think the best thing, or one way to just checkmate stuff like that, is to see the number of people that are actually using stuff, that are actually using it, and compare it to is this really real? Or for example, something that you know that obviously npm package, a lot of developers use a lot of npm packages. So what do you now do to just make sure that, or what's the first thing that comes to your mind to just know that this particular package is not real or has been compromised? So the simple thing is that maybe by the number of persons that are actually on that particular project. I think with that, most of organizations now fall into being a victim of supply chain attacks, which is also one very, very important topic, or very, very important aspect of the open source space.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it's something that is always going to happen. It keeps happening. There's nothing we can do to actually stop it from happening. But what we can do is, prevent ourselves or reduce the likelihoods that we'll fall victim to it by doing basic validations, using tools like Sneak as well to check, to automate some of these processes, and just verify it like as much as possible before using a particular library, or before using a particular open source project. Verify that it's actually what it claims to be. And it doesn't come intuitively all the time, because it's like, oh, you find this cool project, especially if it's not something you've even worked with before. You just find someone recommended it somewhere, or you heard about it and then you search, or you're just searching for certain tools and then you stumble on it. It's easy to just go install it, run the commands or whatever. So it's definitely an additional step. But I think if you make it a habit, it's going to be worth it in the long run. Something else is like through threat intelligence feeds. If we have, as an organization, if you have like proper threat intelligence feeds set up where you're able to tell whenever anything security related comes up and it's relevant to your tech stack, your technologies that you use, then whenever there's an alert that comes out to say, oh, there's, I don't know, 60 malicious npm packages you need to be to know about, or there's a major typosquatting that's happened, you can easily get automated alerts for things like that, and then investigate to find out if you're affected. So I think, yeah, it has to be a holistic approach. It can't be just relying on number of people that have downloaded it, because it could just be that it's a really good clone and just thousands of people have already fallen for it, and then you just become the next one. um but if it's something that's supposed to be a popular library and you find out there's only like, I don't know, 20 stars on GitHub, then obviously that should raise some red flags. But that shouldn't be the only yardstick to figure out if something is, legitimate or malicious.
I think using forums or depending on vulnerabilities, database systems is something that actually helps with the log for this as well, because it was ranked 10. The CVSS score was 10 out of 10. That's to show you how critical it was. But because a large number of people have already fallen victim for it, it might, in one way or the other, be considered a zero day attack, because before the security researchers were able to find out that, okay, this had already happened, the damage has been done. So, but at the same time, it's still quite important to also be active in checking these forums, or actually monitoring threat detection systems as well. These days, companies most of the time rely on tools that any company can kind of like give you the tool to just tell them that, okay, this is for example an endpoint detection security tool, to just make sure that they give them alerts on popular vulnerabilities, and they kind of like get these alerts and automatically put some measures into make sure that they mitigate or remove themselves from getting or falling victim for this kind of stuff like that. So it all boils down to being on top of the tools and just making sure that the team is actually very, very updated and very, very constantly learning, watching out for what's happening, trends, and all of that. And I think one good thing again is actually reading reports. You mentioned Sneak. I got an email from Sneak for their end of the year 2024 open source reports, and it was quite a bulky one. And I'm very, very sure quite a number of organizations or companies are already doing stuff like that. So it's also very, very interesting and nice to get access to some of these reports, to read about them, just to know what's ahead.
Definitely. I think there was one more vulnerability I wanted to talk about, Heartbleed. But yeah, we've crossed the 30-minute mark already. Like I said, there's going to be more. We're planning to do more, talk about more vulnerabilities, and probably put in a playlist or something. But so yeah, I'm sure we'll still talk about it another time. It's not something that's recent, so yeah, it doesn't matter when we eventually when we do it. So it's not like something we need to urgently talk about now. But yeah, is there anything that you wanted to add?
I would have wanted to ask you to just give maybe 3 pointers into what organizations or individuals would do to just stay abreast of most of these vulnerabilities. But I believe we've mentioned a few ones into the conversations, like being updated on search forums, and I don't know if we missed out one. If you want to add maybe one more.
Off the top of my head, I think I've already mentioned a lot of those things. I think one other thing I didn't mention is to look at like the contributions. A lot of these major projects have lots of different contributors. If there's no one contributing to it, then it might not even be a case of dependency confusion or typosquatting, or the package itself being malicious. It might just be a case of like it's not well maintained. If it's not been updated in 2-3 years, then that obviously is a red flag, because then it means if there's a new vulnerability that affects that particular tool or that particular library, then it's very unlikely that it's going to be fixed. Um, so just making sure that things are flowing well and it's well maintained. And another thing, I guess, is try to support these open source projects as much as you can. It could be contributing a small amount, it could be anything really. Um, I think the more we support open source, the more it benefits everyone, because it's freely available. It's something that you can that a lot of people and organizations benefit from. Um, and yeah, it's going to be a more a better ecosystem if we all do our part to contribute as much as we possibly can, or in our own little or big way. But yeah, I think this was another solid, really good discussion. And yeah, I don't know what we're going to talk about next, but we have lots of ideas, and I'm sure we'll just pick one of those ideas and run with it next time. um but yeah, thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Don't forget to like, subscribe if you haven't already. Drop a comment on your thoughts. Is there anything that we missed out on? Is there anything that you wish we talked about? Or do you have anything to contribute to the discussion? Just drop that in the comments. And yeah, thank you very much for listening. You're muted.
Yeah, I'm just saying peace and have a good one, everyone.
All right, bye.